Hello, everybody. Good morning. It's Saturday. I'm Jack Devine, and welcome back to another episode of Office Hours. Today, we are going to, or at least I'm going to start out talking to you guys. I don't have control over where this thing goes. Obviously, I'm happy to feel, that's the whole point of this, is for whatever I do initially to kick off a lively debate, and hopefully you guys will come back and respond with interesting questions that are provocative and to some degree, can help steer this conversation in other directions. I am happy to be here. My family is fortunately either sleeping or doing other activities on this beautiful Saturday winter morning here, and I am going to see about why can't I find my channel. It should have a simulcast here, but whatever. Today I'm playing the 335, and I'm kind of going for a darker jazzy sound. Something about this smoky sound. Right, it just sounds lovely. Bit of tremolo and some space on there, if I hold it a little longer, it gets a little spacier. That's kind of the delay fades in, which is a nice effect for sure. And I'm going to be starting out talking about some of the basics that seem to elude, well, they're not, all right, this isn't basic, but it is somewhat of a stumbling block for a lot of emerging players that are kind of they've really been grinding away for a while, and they can't seem to figure out how to apply the things that they've learned along the way. And one of the things that I think is super helpful for this is to have a playground that kind of tests you for specific chords, and I call these kitchen sink progressions. Okay, so the one that if any of my students are tuning in, they'll be familiar with this idea, and this song that I'll be using is one that I love and play consistently, but you might not have heard because it's a little weird, or at least unheard of by most younger guys. Here we go. I'm up and running. I want to see that. And it's called Kinfolks in Carolina, and it's out of I'm playing it out of G6. Okay, so that means G major. Okay, and we can access that sound, but mainly what we're after is actually the triad plus that sound, which anybody who's tuned in here will definitely recognize as the major pentatonic flat 3, right? Hello, good morning, Corbin. It's good to see you, dude. All right, and what we're going to be doing is we're going to be talking about making the changes from one chord to the next and just kind of remembering our little playbook. Okay, so we're going from our major pentatonic 1 chord up to the 5 chord, a D chord. Okay, now my looper's behind me, so pardon me while I turn my back on you. But it would sound like this. I'm not sure whether or not the balance is working well there, but the idea here is that we treat each chord like its own little song. And so it forces the mind to kind of jump around a little bit. And if you're lucky enough to find two chords in a row that are stemming from the same diatonic family tree, right, then you should count yourself lucky. But that's the point of this, is to be challenged by this progression. This progression is not simple. It's not just like set the controls all on 10 and just blaze. You actually have to kind of be a little involved. And what you really have to do is have your shit screwed down pretty tight for different types of chords. So the first chord being that major 6, the second being a 5 chord, the third being this B7 chord, okay, which is going to be functioning in a non-standard fashion. Typically, we would see this B7 and say, oh, there's a flat 7 or a dominant chord. Sorry. And we would play Mixolydian, and rightly so, as long as it's functioning as an actual 5 chord to the actual 1. But once it starts to be a 5 chord that's in reference to another chord from the diatonic family chord tree, right, that we call that a secondary dominant. Okay, so this is not functioning as the 5 of 1, it's functioning as the 5 of 6. Okay, so at that point, we actually can start to reconsider how we approach this B7 chord. And the way that I historically love to look at it is, I play the harmonic minor of the minor 6 chord before the minor 6 appears, and sometimes this is also referred to as the Phrygian dominant. Okay, so that would be, we still have the major 3rd, the root, and the flat 7, and the 5. It's just, what do we do with the in-between notes, okay? Typically, Mixolydian would go with the major 2nd, but with our Phrygian dominant, Phrygian has a flat 2. And it has a flat 6 too. Still has a 4, still has a 3. So we end up with that kind of an exotic sound, right? So if we play that over top of that B7 chord, we're going to get that sound right into our E minor chord, which is, that's an E minor, okay, well, just like just the 6, which oddly enough we can treat Dorian, actually, because the sound that's coming next is going to be an A7, which features a C sharp so prominently. And you see how this starts to stack up layer upon layer of these chords, and you've got to remember this little playbook about how to navigate through this little maze. And that's why I call these kitchen sink progressions. They're really challenging, and at the same time, super enriching in terms of your abilities to kind of, I don't know how to put it any other way than to kind of man up a little bit. This is like tough stuff for sure. All right, so let's just do it bit by bit, block by block, right? Chord by chord. So over the 1 chord, we're going to approach it major pentatonic. And play into our 5 chord. That's a D chord. Okay, now look. Remember what I said about the next chord is a B, so we want to target its major 3rd. On the downbeat, we hit its down. We hit the major 3rd of that B, which is that Phrygian dominant sound. We could literally just play that straight down over the B chord, and then come into the E minor chord. And you'll see how all these chord tones are 1 fret away from where we ended our line. So consequently, we're going to end up with a very kind of connected sound. So let's try it again. yeah, I'm gonna default to using all of my skills, not to embarrass myself in front of you guys. But initially, right, we're just talking about. All good, blessings and love from New York. All due respect for teaching us. Thank you. Hey, W Chills. That's nice of you to say. Thank you very much. I appreciate it super duper much. And I wish that I could see what's going on with respect to my YouTube won't allow me to actually see my live cast as if I was just some other guy, which really is helpful for me because I can then read your comments as they occur. Like, it won't allow me to, it's driving me bonkers. So I'm gonna have to get lucky and be looking at the screen, which is small and right in front of me, if I'm gonna answer you. All right, so if anybody doesn't understand anything, they should ask a question live in real time and pray to God that I'm looking at the screen, okay? So look, I know I'm buzzing around, but if you know what these tonalities mean, you know, major pentatonic flat 3, you should be able to understand what that is. That little like flat 3 3 1 6 5. We're gonna go into the third of our D chord right there. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, this is kind of like dummy bebop. This isn't real bebop. No way. Nowhere even close to it. Good morning. What a pleasant surprise for a Saturday. Hey, David. Nice to see you, sir. So it's not even close to bebop. Anybody who thinks that this is bebop, they're wrong. So that's an old one. Why can't I see my live broadcast? I want to see my live broadcast. Maybe one of these days I'll be a big enough fish in this YouTube world where there's actual tech support for me, the talent, baby. But until then, I'll just have to struggle and be an old man interacting with technology that I barely understand. So G major, we can utilize the G major scale. It just can sound a little corny. I prefer the slightly bluesy sound of, but let's hear the G major scale against that first chord. There it is again. Let's do it again. Okay, we're kind of bopping a little bit. You know, I'm doing my best to make it sound decent. All right, so over top of that B chord, sorry, then E minor, into the third of A, and then target the third of every chord, the third of the D chord. All right, and if you want to, you can get fancy and do an augmented arpeggio. And then you're targeting the third of the G again on the second time through the progression, which we haven't really talked about yet. All right, so the second time of the progression is G. Same major pentatonic flat 3. Except right there we put in the flat 7 before we go to our 4 chord finally. We have yet to play the C chord. All right, so you're hearing then C sharp diminished, G down to E7, A7, D7, 1, 6, 2, 5. The Martin did not like that. Martin's A string is quite lively back there. Let's see, do I have a sock to put in that? Normally I keep something around here to dummy that up. That's no good. Let's put it there. Let's see if that stops it. Good, okay, cool. So, I'm not sure whether or not this is getting through to anybody here, but we're gonna, yeah, it just doesn't want to do what I want it to do. Why won't I see, I can't see what's going on. View channel. It should say Jack Devine is live now. And it kind of does, but I can't see it. Why don't I see it? I'm just going to turn that off then. Stop wasting my battery. Okay, so we finally have a flat 7 to think about over that G chord. We finally get to use... Right, that F note. And we're going to use that to pull into the third of our 4 chord. Like that, okay? So wait till we get to that second half of the progression, all right? Right here. Diminished. 6, 2, 5, 1, 6, 2, 5, 1. And we're back. Whoa. Okay, again. And the trick is to not be thinking of licks, but ideas that involve the chord tones, all right? So yeah, there's some licks, there's some lick play, but really it's more like playing within the confines of each. I kind of view each of these chords as a state with its own rules. And so I'm thinking about, well, what can I get away with here? Is pot legal here? Is the drinking age here this? you know, if you want to get creepy, you could, I'm sure there's all kinds of tasteless jokes that I could make. But the idea here is, hey, what can you do in specific settings, right? What are the rules? What are the governing dynamics of a specific type of chord? And let me share with you how I tend to approach things. First and foremost, if it's major, you can play major pentatonic over it. If it's minor, you can play minor pentatonic over it, okay? But you want to also think about what you can get away with outside of your pentatonics, right? So this is why I always espouse the concept of the pentatonic plus. All right, so bass system should be your pentatonic ideas, and then you look around at the surrounding areas and you say, oh, well, culturally speaking, this is tolerated under this sound, right? So if we're headed towards that E minor from this sound, that sounds appropriate rather than, we're not going to an E major. So if you look at the extensions that are valid over top of this chord and the chord you're going into, which is an E minor 7, and then the next chord is an A7, and then, so you can kind of hear this note kind of coming down, right? We're playing D. Sorry. Okay. That little, that's happening there in that progression, right? The idea is to be able to hear the chords changing based on the lines that you're playing. What helps me? Chord shapes. I remember this. So I'll go. Right? And then I'll think about this G chord here. And then I'll see the D chord. So that's me coming up through the D. Okay, if you don't know that, that's like a nice Django style arpeggio. We're only kind of using the outer fingers. 1, 3, 5, 1, 3, 5, 1, 3. Okay. Now we can add flat sevens in there. Okay, we can add a diminished sound. That sounds pretty sweet too. Okay. Lots of options for there. That augmented sound. That adds a lot of tension. Da, da. Over top of that, flat 2. Right, so the flat 2 comes up. So the flat 2 of the 5 comes up into our 6. A lot of people wonder about how is the 6 chord functioning as the 1? Why isn't it just a straight major? Why is it? Basically, it just gives you more real estate that you can inhabit as a soloist, I think, and that's just the sound of Texas swing, which is, if we were to talk about the genre from which this comes, it's definitely a Texas swing song. And Texas swing, you know, doesn't really feature a tremendous amount of solo electric guitar. It's mostly fiddles and maybe lap steel. You'll hear it from time to time played on electric guitar, but it's a really wonderful progression. And granted, the song didn't start out there. I believe this is a Merle Travis tune, and it's out of a different key, and This is just where I learned it, and this is where I play it. This is where I teach it, and consequently, I'm real strong at playing this progression in G. I don't think I would fare too well in B flat, to be perfectly frank. But this is still a great lesson for you to just find one of these kitchen sink progressions. It could be All of Me, or Sunny Side of the Street, or Georgia on My Mind, or something like that. Something that's got a couple of curveballs in it. You don't want a purely diatonic song. That's just not going to challenge you in the same way that's going to make you do what I think of as this, like, I'm crossing the border from the G now into this non-diatonic chord of this B7 into E minor with like an E Dorian thing, going to an A and then back to D7, which can accommodate diminished tonalities, or maybe just straight D7, and getting us back there. And finally that flat 7 idea, then the 4 finally, just kind of its own little major pentatonic idea again. Then we get the C to a diminished sound, then E7 again, G6 again, back to E, A7, D7, and then a 1 6 2 5 with dominant chords on the 6 and the 2. Now, if all that is Greek to you, then we're in trouble, but I'll try to explain it. Okay, normally in the key of G, we would see a 1 6 2 5 with the 6 and the 2 chords being straight minor 7s, like that. But in mine, we're playing. What does that do? It forces you as the soloist to accommodate the third of the E7, which is a non-diatonic chord tone. We are going to be going. Okay, then A7 has a C sharp in it, which is not diatonic to G major, so that forces the same move again. And then D is our straight up the 5 of where we came from. So we're really just tweaking 2 chords in our 4-chord turnaround. 1, 2, 3, 4. So this 6 chord, and that's the reason why we call it the 6, if you don't know, is it's the 6th note in the major scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Everybody knows do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, I hope. So if we're dealing with that, 1, 6 dominant, 2 dominant. Now really what we're doing is playing the 5 of the 5 of the 5 back to 1. Okay, and that's kind of an interesting thing in the first place. Okay, so let's look at this again. Pentatonic with a flat 3rd. Down to our D, right? Now up into the 3rd of that B with the weird. Into E. Into the 3rd of the A chord. And then down. Augmented, and then back to 6. G6, that is. Right? And then flat 7 into the 4 chord. 4, diminished. Back to 1. So that's dun 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 dun. Right, then A7. That was E7, A7, D7, back to G6. All right, and these kind of fall under these kitchen sink progressions. They kind of fall under like man maker kind of things. This will really train your ass up in a way that playing Peggy-O won't, for example. You're just sitting around playing something that's all A major all day long. Yeah, you know, it's the bullseye's a lot bigger on those kinds of songs, and I'm not disputing the value of those songs compositionally or emotionally. I just think that they provide less of an opportunity for you to grow. Hey Jack, hello from New Delhi. Absolutely love my playing and my lessons. You have such a fine way of phrasing. Thanks for just okay. So that's just appreciation, no real question there. If you have a question, don't be quiet. Háblame. I don't know why I'm talking to you in Spanish. You're in India. Chances are my Hindi does not exist, but your English very good. Thank you. So if you have a question, please, folks. Now, the truth is, all of these licks and ideas, well, save for the ones north of the 14th fret, were probably developed by me when I was playing acoustic music. This was a song that I used to play in an acoustic setting. And so speed doesn't really factor into acoustic music in the same way it can on an electric guitar. You just can't get away with certain things. There's like the fastest thing you could do on an acoustic guitar. Something like that, maybe, because you've got some momentum behind those hammer-ons. Trills. That kind of thing. Okay, and those are major pentatonic ideas. And they kind of cover a lot of ground. You're definitely going to need pentatonics. Everybody who thinks I'm not trying to mock any of my students, but if you're out there, you might remember when you came to me and you said, I know my pentatonics and my modes. And I said, okay. And then we'll sit down and we'll start to realize that what that really means to you is that you know a couple of the modal shapes of the major scale, not knocking where you were when you came to me, and that you also knew the minor pentatonic shapes and understood that if you took them down 3 frets, you kind of had some a fighting chance of finding vocabulary that would play nice with a major chord. But there's a big difference between like having awareness of and feeling comfortable in that briar patch, right? I want you guys to start to think about what's happening here. We're really working this idea of the root and the 6 and the 5 an awful lot in this genre. Doing is thinking about specific licks. I'm literally just thinking about the rules of the road within each chord. G6, major pentatonic, flat 3. We're thinking we can get away with a couple of ideas over this D7 chord. We can think about a D7 like a straight mixolydian. We can add all our flat 3 ideas. Let's see that bluesier sound over top of it. Okay, whoops. Big old clam. C sharp is not welcome over the B on the downbeat. That's what I said before. We don't want that. Malo. We want... So that's a good example of showing you that I screw up. No, it's a good example of showing you that you could play D blues over top of that chord, although it isn't really my preference, but I do it sometimes. Sometimes I'll do an extended chromatic idea like... like that that kind of thing, where I'll do like a tension building thing. And if anybody's curious about what that is, it's pretty simple. We're coming into the third and the fifth, and we're going. So down, slide, up, down, slide, up, down, slide, up, down, slide, up. Okay, and we get triplet, 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 triplet. Would it be best to focus on one chord, C-H-O-R-D, by the way, and play scales and arpeggios to work with the chord? Yes, it is best to think in those ways, but you have to know whether or not the chord that you're playing over has any rules about what it is based on what's surrounding it. Now, I just got through with a great lesson with a student, I think he might be my oldest student, and we were talking a little bit about modes, which, we do from time to time. And he was still saying, like, look, we talked about this a bunch, and I don't know why, but there's still like a mental block here. And he started out his question by asking me, so we're in B minor. And I said to him, kind of with some cheekiness, which B minor? And that was kind of the point of his question is, how do I know which B minor scale to play? And I said, well, there's no way to know until you hear either the next chord or somebody plays a note that declares the status of that B minor. So let's just say we were playing, I'm going to use that B minor example. If the bass line was going and only playing B, and the B minor chord was just going, there's no way to know should I be playing B Phrygian, B Aeolian, or B Dorian, or even B harmonic minor, right? Or melodic minor. Which of those minor scales is appropriate in that instance? And the truth of that matter is any and all could be used at that point. But the second anybody hits any note that's outside of the triad, that's going to be the B, the D, or the F sharp, we're going to have some information. And just like, I grew up in a house with two parents that played bridge. And the idea of declaring your suit it was always this, we're playing clubs, right? And so all of a sudden, basically we're waiting for the progression to tell us what's allowed. So if we hear... all of a sudden we hear that 9. That C sharp tells us, right? We're hearing 1, flat 3, 5, 9. We now know that this is not a 3 chord in the key of G. And my student went, which makes sense because he was having trouble understanding that would therefore make the fact that this isn't a 3 chord is determined by the fact that we're not playing a flat 2, which would make it a Phrygian chord, right? G, do, re, mi. Right, G major over top of B minor sounds like that. My parents played bridge. My mother and I met it. All right, that's cool. I mean, I think a lot of people. Oh, I'm old as the hills. All right, is that J.D. Simo's old guitar? No, this is Jay Devine's old guitar. I've had this guitar for 20 plus years, I guess. It's not as nice as J.D. Simo's guitar, or I think he had the one with PAFs in it, which is significantly more valuable than one of these mid-60s models. His was early 60s. So back to what I'm talking about. By playing this B minor sound, and once we hear the C sharp over it, we know it's either Aeolian, because that's in the, or it's going to be Dorian. So now we have there's some sleuthing going on here, right? Well, but at this point, to me, this is, so once we hear this minor 7th chord with a 9 over it, we can eliminate Phrygian. Thank God, because Phrygian sucks. Did I say that? Yes. Anyway. But if we were to hear a sixth in there like this, dead giveaway that now we're in B Dorian. If we heard this, a 4 chord, sure, I can talk a little bit about double stops. But once we get to the point where we're seeing a 4 chord with that note in it, we can kind of eliminate the thought of playing Dorian over top of the B chord, because that our progression has spelled itself out to us. It's kind of given away what's tolerable. All right, so those are the rules of the road, but they're spelled out in the chords that we're playing over. But until somebody plays it, let's say it was even a bass player, and the bass player, this time, let's say the bass player played a C. He went. He played that C. We want to start using that information. We want to play off of the information that's being given to us by our surroundings, okay? You can't expect your C sharp to work well over top of when that bass player does that. So I would just avoid, first of all, I would just probably just play B minor pentatonic with a flat 5. You have a J.D. Simo t-shirt. I like that guy's playing. I think he's an incredible musician. I was fortunate enough to get to see him play in Nashville when I turned 40. God, that was forever ago. That's 14 years ago. Jesus. All right, so that's how we can kind of determine what we're allowed to get away with, is we have to look at what's going on. It takes a while at first, and then pretty soon you're like, oh, I know what I can do here, right? So you want to know how we think about double stops? Were you thinking about how to do that over a minor chord? Or are you interested in how to do that over the previous progression, which would be significantly more complex because each chord is going to have its own governing dynamics, right? If we're just talking about a 1 chord jam, all right, if we're thinking about, let's say we were playing the Dorian sound over top of here. B Dorian is part of the A major scale. So all the double stops that pertain, we are the same age. That's great. So if you're playing B minor and you're thinking of it as a Dorian sound and you want to know which double stops are yours to use, you want to use the currency, the double stops from the parent scale that your modal minor comes from. So if it's a B Dorian jam, you're going to want to use these. And that should make sense because look, that is the 9 and the flat 7 of your B Dorian. And if we come back here, we have the root and the Dorian 6th. If we come up here, we're going to see the minor 3rd and the 5th. Okay, blah, da, 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 right? Hear that? That's da, da, da. Sorry, yeah. Okay, so if we were playing, say, a song out of G major that started on the D chord and went, we wouldn't go D major. We would go G major. That's what the temptation is, oh, D is the chord I'm playing over, therefore I'll, no bueno. Don't forget the next chord in that sequence is the C. We're really playing out of the 5 chord to the 4 chord to the 1 chord of G, right? And back to there. So this is like morning dew kind of thing, right? So yeah, right? That would have been a C Lydian. And then da, da, da. And then back to. Key changes to F. Sorry, not F. It actually changes to C, but we come in on an F chord. Grateful Dead love to do this kind of shit where they play chords first that aren't the home key chord, right? Morning Dew is a great example of that. We're starting in D, over a D chord, to a C, to a G. All of that's key of G. And then when we come up here to the... Right? What do I do over that? Well, that's a C Lydian, that's going to be F Lydian. Into the 1 chord. Sorry. Into the 3 chord. Back to the D chord. Lydian. 1. Then E minor. Okay. And that's kind of how we can do that, like musical Matlock kind of forensic analysis of a progression and go, oh, if this, then that, if this, then that. And, you know, there are plenty of people who don't use theory, okay? Much better players than me who don't know what the fuck is going on at like a school smarts kind of level. And while I didn't really go too deep into that, I switched my brain to think about A minor during that section. Well, A minor would be, well, yeah, because C major and A minor are the same. So if you've aligned your mind with understanding double stops out of A minor, okay, like real A minor, like A minor, the 6th chord of C major, that A minor, C Aeolian, then, A Aeolian, okay? That's gonna mean with an F in it, right? That's the way to go. Absolutely. So you're not wrong. I just think that it's easier to think about things stemming from their major parent key. Okay? Because when you don't see things, you should realize that the most minor chords are, to me anyway, I see them as being modes of their major parent key. So when you say something's in A minor, to me it's really in C major. But we're playing out of the 6th mode. So that means A to A, but the notes of C major. Which to some might seem like an unnecessary filter to add to your thought process. And yeah, at some point you have to kind of let go of the brain power and just rely on what's in your nuts and in your guts and just go. But you'll find a little thinking can be really helpful. All right, so back to like figuring out what's going on. We could look at other progressions and figure out what's happening. We can look at, you know, songs and go, oh, well, why should I do this there? And usually the answer is surrounding you. It's kind of like that old Native American adage that, you know, if you're bitten by a snake, that the antidote to what ails you is somehow around the thing that injured you, right? So usually the cure is within arm's reach of whatever it is that injured you or whatever your problem in life is. So here we are looking at that B chord, and we'll see things that happen right after it, and we'll go, okay, that means I have this note and my B minor triad. And she must disappear. Not disappear. She must be informed via text that I am online. Hang on a moment here. I don't want to be bothered. Hang on a second. What's up? She wants to talk. She's a great girl. Sometimes she wants to talk when I want to text. Amuse yourselves here, folks. All right, no answer. Can't be that important. What is that? That's that tune. That's a pretty tune. That's a good example of a Phrygian chord. We're talking about that C sharp minor, right? That's a flat 2 in it. I had a dream. I had everything I wanted. Secondary dominant. Beautiful. That little girl sang beautifully on that tune. I think that's a real winner. Double stops sound cool as fuck? Yeah, of course. Part of a chord, right? I mean, that's really all we're doing. If you want to experiment with double stops and arpeggios kind of mixed, you want to learn your spread triads. That's a real winner of a sound. That kind of once you start to learn those, right, you can definitely start making around. That was almost clipped. That is clipped over the. Right? Something like that. Something like that with that crazy hybrid thing. I don't do that very well. Pedal licks, man. Those are great. Johnson was such a badass. What was that? Oh shit, I didn't see that. I'm disappointed. I can't get my teleprompter to do its job. It says I'm live, but it won't show me what's going on. That's disappointing in the air. No, that's still not it. See, I can't understand why YouTube fucked itself up. I used to do that, then I could do that, and I could see what the fuck was going on. And now I'm cursing, and I don't like that because it makes me look like trash. You never get into, did I ever get into Red Vocalert? I mean, yeah. Yeah, I mean, look, I like that super telly twangy stuff, but to be honest, the songs that it accompanies tends not to blow back my hair, what little is remaining. To me, the song has to be there first, really, for me to appreciate the music the guitar that's being played. After a while, like, as much as I'd say, I honestly put, no offense to anybody who likes that music or some of the other music I'm about to name, but like, let's think about how much time I've spent kind of understanding and being aware of a guy as talented as he is. I'd say, like, look at Yngwie Malmsteen. There's no debating the man's gifts. He's incredible. And at the same time, I can listen to about 10 minutes of it before I'm like, that's enough for a long time. That'd be like if somebody sat me down and made me drink like a lot of absinthe or something like that. It's a very pungent kind of experience, right? Or if I sat down and had to eat a lot of cloves, all right? It's just like, wow, this is a very, very concentrated and crystallized funk or smell or taste or flavor or whatever. And his skill set is kind of so purified to the point where if you like it enough to be able to endure, and I use that word deliberately, hours of it at a stretch, then you've actually developed like quite a meaningful, like an auditory callus is the best way I can think about it. Sorry, I don't like that brightly. So like for me, there's no part of me that doesn't totally respect Yngwie Malmsteen. And at the same time, I would never put it on other than to show somebody who was discrediting him how talented he was. So in the same way, I don't listen to like country music very often. Red Vocalert is clearly one of the preeminent, he's the tip of the spear for a lot of that telly twangy stuff. Spectacular player. You'll never catch me driving down the road listening to that on my own. It just doesn't knock my socks off. So much the same way, like you're not going to hear me listening to too much jazz. You just discovered Red Vocalert. Well, like I said, there's no disputing his gifts. He's incredible. He's also super sweet. I have friends who are super tight with him and have shared stages with him and know him. He's a nice guy. All right, I'm not knocking anybody. It's just like everybody's music isn't for me, and I'm certainly not for everybody. God, I've been informed how much people detest my presence, many times. You hear me? You dig that space between country and jazz. Exactly. So do I. It's just that isn't what I listen to. I don't mind playing it from time to time. I mean, that's kind of where this lesson started out when you think about it, is a tune like where I'm kind of updating Merle Travis tune to have a little bit more, a little bit more of a Django kind of energy around some of those diminished subs over top of the dominant chord. Right, and using that kind of sound rather than it being that kind of thing. What is it? That's kind of the nicer. So if you guys want to, hey, whoa, that sounds like you're Kinfolks in It is Kinfolks in Carolina. It is. That's what I was playing. So, I use that as my little template to keep my chops up for sure. I should probably do other tunes, but it's definitely super helpful. Mr. Sandman's a good one too. We used to play that a lot. So you get that, what is that? The opening is, yeah. Beautiful tune. I remember the first time my big brothers musically, how do I do double stops over Bertha? Again, I'm thinking about what chord is the home chord, which is where most folks get things turned around. If we're doing Bertha, let's ditch the kinfolks loop. Bye-bye. And we'll do this, and we should have just a basic sound now. All right, most people think that Bertha, because it starts on G, that it's in the key of G. It's not. That's the 5 chord. Right? When we play bluegrass, which, don't forget, most of Garcia's training was bluegrass, we do this thing, like songs that are in the key of C often will start out with what we call potatoes in the 5, going. And that's basically what's happening there, is that we're going, instead of sorry. He's going boom, 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 boom. And this is basically like we're just on the 5 chord. And the way that we know that it's on the 5, this is a 5 chord, is because we're often going to hear this kind of, right? You'll even hear that in that guitar solo that he takes there, where he goes to get into C, okay? So I had a hard run. So basically all your double stops, back to the question that was given, they should all be out of C major. Okay, they should not be out of G major. So you're going to want to learn all that stuff. You know, C is a great key to learn double stops on the guitar. So you get those. That's your answer, okay? Go to the parent scale, all right? The problem is you have to recognize the difference between a G major and a C major, one being the 1 chord, one being the 4 chord, or one being the 5 chord and one being the 1 chord. Or maybe in the case of Fire on the Mountain, one being the 4 chord and one being the 5 chord, you know? Like, the Grateful Dead like to fuck around with all that stuff. They don't always start the song on the home chord, even if it's a major. And so this is where players get into trouble with the pentatonics will work, major pentatonics will work over all of them, and they go, okay, great, now it's time for me to extend the harmony by adding in their fourths and their sevenths, which is totally the right thing to do, is that you want to feel out where it is, and their intuition that the song started on G, so therefore it should be in G major, is just wrong. And so they end up putting a bunch of F sharps over top of that G major chord, and it just sounds kind of, you know. There's only one real instance where I can think about utilizing G major 7 sounds over top of the G chord in Bertha, and that's if you're shooting for that extended chromaticism that comes from utilizing enclosures, which is a technique that Garcia was experimenting with starting in the late 70s all the way to his demise. So, you know, you'll hear this kind of idea first brought up into the what do you call it, into his lexicon starting in like the mid 70s, over, you know, and in particular over top of that kind of sound over top of the G chord in They Love Each Other. Okay. Sorry. Right? So what are we doing there? We're taking the 3 chord tones, the 1, the 5, and the 3, and we're going to be applying what we call an enclosure to each of those 3 tones, and those color tones being surrounded by or enclosed by these 2 fixed kind of, we come up with a predetermined enclosure. The one that Garcia is utilizing there is a diatonic scale tone above the tone and a chromatic approach tone beneath the target sound. So if we were to do that, we would say in the key of G, we would have G major. Okay, glad to see I'm gaining subscribers. Am I? I don't know. It's been a long, strange trip, dude. So I think I'm up to what, 9,500 or something like now. I mean, it's nice, but it's been. Is that right? Oh, that's fun. Not. Oh, okay. Hey, you know, yeah. The truth is, I would probably be doing this if I was still back in the hundreds, because I had a ball during COVID actually doing this stuff. Kind of gave me reinvigorated my interest in the instrument actually, and forced me to reconsider how to approach it and how to think about it, and it made me think about it rather than just do it, which wasn't the worst thing for my playing actually. It turned out to be really beneficial. But back to the enclosure idea, right? We're gonna, if we look at the notes going up, we would go, okay, the 1 is going to be surrounded by a whole step above, because that's and a chromatic passing tone, right? Or approach tone. And just so happens that that is also diatonic to the G major scale. Okay, but when we come up to the 5, the 6 is a whole step above, but the approach tone is now a flat 5, non-diatonic. And then when we come to the 3, the diatonic scale tone above the B in G major is a C, and then the flat 3rd. So this is kind of weird for most folks because they see, okay, so we end up with right? So we're outlining a G major sound with diatonic above, chromatic approach below, regardless of whether or not that chromatic approach tone is diatonic to the scale or born from the chord scale. We're going to use it anyway. So we get tension on the 5 and on the 3, but not on the root. Okay, big deal. And so this one doesn't really even feel like tension because we're so used to hearing flat 3rds put up against major chords from all the blues that we have ingested over the years, right? We could hear that as a major sound. Right, that flat 3 is loud and proud in a lot of solos. All right, so that's probably one instance where I could see using that information, because we kind of are using it as part, that major 7, to go back to how people misunderstand Grateful Dead music as being G major over top of that first chord. I think that's easy greasy. Gotta go.